Hi, I'm Lael Keen,
I'm Russell Jones.
and we're here to talk to you more about somatic experiencing, which is a fantastic new cutting edge approach to healing of trauma.
And trauma often is thought of as something really heavy, something really horrible. And often traumatic events are horrible and there's a great deal of suffering involved. That could be called the bad news, but as Dr. Peter Levine, the founder of Somatic Experiencing, says, trauma doesn't have to be a life sentence, which means when you work through your trauma and renegotiate it, as we say in Somatic Experiencing, that trauma becomes transformed and becomes one of your greatest resources and greatest experiences that allows you to really expand the field of your own life, the space of your own life, and your own abilities to enjoy yourself and be happy.
We talked a little bit in the last video about somatic experiencing, how it understands trauma, which is that there is very, very high fight and flight activation, and then there is an even higher freeze activation, and they're all happening at the same time. Now, this is an enormous amount of energy that our systems organize when we are in peril. And the really exciting thing about this is that this energy, when there's trauma, that energy is held, frozen, and stuck in the system, and that manifests as misery for human life. When this energy is free, this energy becomes available to us for our own life path and purposes. And it is actually a higher level of energy than we have had before. So to truly transform and renegotiate trauma, of course, you have to work with what's there, which first is suffering and symptoms and pain in many different facets or many different ways. As you work through that, the gift that is there begins to be available to you.
One of the key elements of working with trauma through this approach is a concept which is borrowed from chemistry called titration. Titration is when you have two chemicals that you want to put together that are volatile and create an explosion, but you still want to mix them to create a new chemical. How do you do it? You do it drop by drop. So when we're working with trauma, it's so important to take the level of activation that's pent up in that freeze response and work with it, work through it, and discharge it drop by drop, layer by layer, step by step, bite by bite. All those metaphors we bring into play to really be able to deal with that huge, frightening, intense overwhelm that was there. We can deal with the most frightening, biggest challenge in our life if we take it one layer at a time, one scale of the dragon at a time, as Lael likes to say. And then by doing that, we can work through it and we can have access to all that life force energy that is there in our natural instinctive fight and flight responses.
It's also true that many traumas, as is widely known, many traumas also may have an ecstatic component. How many books have there been written about people's afterlife experiences where they die and they come back? And they die and they go through the tunnel and they have meetings with spiritual beings. They may meet with God, they may meet with the Virgin Maria, they may meet with Jesus, they may meet with angels. They come back with a renewed sense of their life and their purpose and what they came here for. Now, these experiences are far more common than we may perceive. One of the things that happens when you have the freeze response in the system is that it blocks memory. And many times the person has a strong spiritual experience that is at the root of their trauma that they do not have access to consciously because of the blocking effect of the freeze response. So once again, as we work with that freeze response, little by little, as Russell said, to get it to unfreeze, then that begins to bring forth the possibility of touching back again into that spiritual experience, which can be life-changing to the place where if you ask the person, would you prefer to have not had this trauma? Or would you prefer to have had it? Many times they will say, I prefer to have had it because afterwards my life has been profoundly transformed.
So as we define trauma, there are many ways to define it, but as we define it as something that is overwhelming to our system, especially our autonomic nervous system, once we're able to work through it in this way, step by step, little by little, and really digest each piece of that activation, that sympathetic activation as we call it, and that fear, that anger that's bound to that, that's coupled with that. You work through it, and that becomes integrated into your system, which means you have that much more power, that much more ability to adapt and to work with the next threat, the next challenge in your life. This is the good news and the beauty and the really wonderful aspect of working with trauma.
Thank you.